How would you know we got kicked off, Barb? I mean, was there
Hold on here.
something that, like, was that a history or something that you said or something?
So,
Possibly.
okay, you're live now.
Are
Awesome.
we?
We are live.
You
Well,
are now live. No
I
intros,
see it.
nothing. You're live. I'm out of here.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
We apologize, everyone. We thought we were
I
alive.
apologize for that. There's been a little bit of a technical difficulty. However, we are the Silverline Wednesday Wham team, and we are discussing the Silverline Christmas special and our particular short stories. And we've already jumped in, so we're gonna continue. But I'll introduce myself. I'm Dean Zachary. I work for Silverline as well on Silver Blade. We also are joined by the Empress of Inks herself, Barbara J. Kilberg. We also have Aaron Humphreys and John, the Viking artist, or the artistic Viking, Martin. We have been discussing our 6-page Christmas short stories, and we will continue to do so. Barb, can you give us just a really quick rundown on what you're going to be addressing for the Divinity Christmas short story?
Yeah, I decided to, most of you have already heard me say before that I'm a military mom. So I decided to focus a little bit on the military aspect for this story. I have Divinity interacting with a soldier. She's very disaffected for Christmas. This is the first Christmas without her parents. They're hiding out in Florida, so there's no snow. It's very, un-Christmas-like for her. She's depressed, and she's lost her Christmas spirit. So the name of the story is Lost and Found, and it tells about how she regains her Christmas spirit by interacting with a homeless soldier. And during the course of the story, we see some flashbacks from the soldier, and I have chosen to go all gray tones for the flashbacks to set them apart. A little bit of an artistic decision there. And my biggest challenge for this story was that normally in the course of writing Divinity, I throw out the plot, the ideas, the high points that I want to hit for a 4-issue arc. I break them down into what I want to see in issues 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then RA comes back with a rough, and then I improve upon that and throw it back, and it's a back and forth type of thing. This time for the 6-issue mini, Roland says, "I want you to do it all yourself," which I've only done one other short story in my entire career. And that was back in 94 when I did a 6-page ElfQuest story for the summer special. So I do have one writing credit under my belt where I did everything on my own, but this will be my second. He edited me, or I edited me is basically what he did. So that was a challenge, and it was a challenge to keep everything that I wanted to say in 6 pages. I could have easily done 7 pages, but I had to pare some things down. You have to look at it and say, can I say and show this particular thing in fewer words and fewer panels and still get the same meaning across? So it was kind of an exercise for me too, to exercise my cinematography muscles, which I don't have to use a lot because RA usually takes care of that for me. I come up with a lot of the dialogue and the ideas, and he looks at it through his little writer cinematography mind and comes up with the points of view and stuff. But I had to do that myself.
Now, what can Divinity fans like myself look forward to seeing in the story in terms of maybe some new information or connecting the story, or maybe even teasing some upcoming threads of story?
Not so much teasing upcoming threads as seeing kind of the effects of the first 4 issues. Unfortunately, the story is going to fall in between the first 4-issue arc and the second 4-issue arc, and I haven't even finished the first 4-issue arc. So it's going to be kind of out of chronological order, but it's such the type of story that it can really fall anywhere. So it's not going to be a big stretch of the imagination to see where it falls. But it's just you get the feeling that this is life on the run.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And what about flashbacks? Do we get any? I know that there's a lot of depth and background story to your characters. So what about flashbacks?
The flashbacks in this particular cases are from the soldier's point of view that she's interacting with. So she's angry because of her parents' death, and she's very much not in the Christmas spirit, and something happens where she recaptures that Christmas spirit. And that's the whole gist of the story is finding joy in Christmas even when there isn't really a lot to be joyful about.
Yeah, very seasonal, because it can be a challenging time for folks, because everyone's lost somebody, and everyone has that sense, who's over a certain age, that there's a melancholy atmosphere to the holidays as well that we all have to deal with. So Aaron, what about you, my friend? Talk to me a little bit about your 6-page story. Who's in it?
The Obsoletes is the main team, and I can show you like 1 or 2 pages. I'll show you like 1 page. Let me see, do I have up here? Okay.
And the Obsoletes are...
They're like basically a team of spice, almost like maybe spice miners. I mean, I don't know. This is one of the pages from it.
Oh, cool.
Will this be our first introduction to them as a Christmas story?
Yes, this is the first time you ever see them, and this is
hopefully
the second page.
Appetite.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
For the upcoming series?
Yeah.
And so
I'll just show you.
For people who have never seen any of this before, that the reader could jump in and get to know the world pretty easily, and the characters as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think if anything, it'll whet your appetite to basically get a sense of who are these people and what, I want to know more about them. That's what we're hoping. Anyways, that people are like, oh, we want to pick up the main series now.
It's a sci-fi, obviously it's science fiction.
Yeah, ours is I think one of the first sci-fi stories Silverline is doing.
Okay.
So yeah, his story is sci-fi set in the future. I'm not sure what year, but I know it is sci-fi. Yeah.
So interstellar travel obviously exists in this world, and what about, are these humans, or is it a mix of species, I should say?
There's mostly all humans so far. There are other aliens, but they're not intelligent as far as I know so far.
Okay.
More like animal sort of aliens.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll take this moment to announce too that this will be the very first printed introduction to Silverblade and the universe that I've been developing. So what I try to do in the 6 pages is give everyone the flavor of the world, Victorian England in 1892, which is a very literary period that covers a lot of characters people are familiar with, everything from Jack the Ripper to Alan Quatermain to Dracula and the supporting cast of those stories. So I chose it partly because of that, and partly because I just thought it would be a cool kind of eerie and spooky period to do a story about 2 secret societies at war to really save humanity from the forces of darkness. So we've got a very mythic quality, but I liked the fact that it's not really steampunk. I mean, people may interpret it that way because of the aesthetic, and there's an element of that, but it really is more of an action adventure sort of Raiders of the Lost Sword is what I like to call it. And you have a secret order of knights who's battling a secret cult of human traffickers, and mayhem ensues. And we also ultimately answer the question of why silver destroys evil. Now, I don't answer that in this particular 6-page intro, but I do introduce you to the main characters. And I think, Aaron, you've got access to page 1, which for everyone who doesn't know, Aaron is coloring page 1, and we're gonna share it now.
We can do that.
Introducing page 1 without letters, so we don't give anything away, of the world of Silverblade. And we're introduced to Elizabeth Dane, who is walking down a street in the Whitechapel district, a very tough working class district at that time. And she's being followed by 2 very mysterious looking cloaked figures. And she knows that it's not a very safe part of town, but she's going to do her Christmas errand, which in this case is to take a bag of groceries and gifts that she has put together to a single mom. And there we have it. You see her walking down the gloomy street there in the snow, and she knocks on the door, and she's let in, and we see a very modest home there of a single mom and her very ill daughter, who's in desperate need of some medicine. The Order of Knights that Elizabeth Dane is connected to at this point in the storyline does a lot of charity work. They also run an orphanage, so they would be dispensing their people out to give to the poor, and this is one of those situations. We're introduced to Elizabeth Dane and immediately
that's his character.
Yes, that's her, and she has a lot of compassion for this sick little girl, and she's a little troubled, we find out in the dialogue, because the much needed medicine that the Order of Knights has tried to get a hold of it has not arrived yet. So there's a little bit of tension, and she's like, I brought food, but I don't have the medicine yet. The medicine is coming with another friend of hers, namely Sam Blake, who will make an appearance shortly. But we get the idea that, the child's not doing well, and we want to set up the story for a so-called Christmas miracle to occur, and for the good guys to get there in time before the child gets worse. So that's your setup for my Christmas story and the introduction of the Silverblade universe through the Christmas special. And it's really kind of fortuitous that we end up seeing this 6-page trailer, as I call it, for the Silverblade world.
They kind of are trailers, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. The 4-issue miniseries does take place in December. It does culminate in a Christmas Eve, and I wrote that way back when, before there was going to be a Christmas special. So it tied in really well to the flavor of the series itself. And as I said, Aaron is coloring it and doing a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you.
And you have a feel for the colors here, and it's already taking shape, and you're bringing them to life. Are you working on something you can share with folks? That's issue right. Like, let me hear. So
I think we're going to end up with at least 16 stories, right? That's 96 pages.
I think so.
Yeah, probably it's going to be quite an impressive anthology. And while you're bringing up the page, I think one thing that fans may be interested in is the fact that I'm not going to give away what's happening there, but that's really going to be a cool page.
Yeah, so this is more of like what it is. So I'm still coloring as I go down.
Yeah, mayhem ensues. So we have a bad guy that starts to spoil Christmas Eve for Elizabeth Dane. And what's going to happen here is that those fans of characters and titles for Silverline are going to get a really good, what I call a sampler platter in this anthology. So the mainstream folks used to do this. Barb, remember DC Showcase?
Oh, yes, I've been part of several of those.
Yes, and it was a way for the publisher to feature new talent, up and coming talent, but also maybe introduce some new spinoff titles and such. And this is a great jumping on point. And from the marketing and business end, Barbara, how do you feel about the Christmas special having so many of our creators featured? How do you think that's going to play out for us?
Well, I think it gives people an opportunity to realize just how much we've grown, for one thing, and to show a really good smorgasbord of what Silverline has for the fan. It's a really great opportunity to show off our talent, show off our stories, and show off how much we are growing in leaps and bounds. Um,
We really are, and I would call this almost a trailer montage, right?
mhm.
If you're talking in YouTube terms, I mean, this would be like going to the Silverline movie page and watching, trailers for at least 16 of the movies, and it's, I don't know, people are putting out their best work. The stuff I've seen, people sharing their art and so on. This is the best of the best of people's work.
It's
And
in
you
our
guys,
top secret message board, folks. I'm sorry.
yeah,
But
oh
it's
yeah,
the silver
oh yeah,
liners only. You get to
Silverline
see what we're
Pros
working
only.
on.
Yeah, but this gives everybody a chance to really see what Silverline is all about. And we talk about this a lot, but I think it's worth mentioning again that one thing great about this company is we don't have any calculated agendas here. We're not trying to sell you on any kind of ideology or politics or what have you. This really is old-fashioned escapism, entertainment, action, adventure, thriller, romance, science fiction, fantasy. We've got it all, and even some espionage with
Oh, yeah.
Kalis. We've got it all, and we really are bringing back that escapism vibe. I would say, wouldn't you, Aaron?
I would, yeah. Our stuff is just more, and the variety. I mean, we kind of started out a little. It's funny. The first few comics, I think, almost leaned a little kind of superheroes here and there, but the new stuff coming out is just like all over. We have fantasy. Uh, yours, I would consider fantasy. So, realist fantasy is sort of like. Uh, and then we have sci-fi. A lot of historical comics, which I think are actually really cool. World War II stuff. So we've kind of spread out and done some really interesting stories. Some really, I mean, we have the steampunk, like Revolutionary War
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
loving
and all
that.
that.
I
Yeah,
can't
Yeah,
wait for the
Steam
second issue.
Patriots. Yeah, very cool. Very cool stuff.
The
What
history buff
about?
like myself, I'm just really digging the historical stuff. So
Oh yeah. I love that book too, and your book's contemporary, Barb, but it has this classic adventure romance feel to it. Not so much that there's a lot of lovey-dovey stuff. I don't mean that, but it's got that adventure feel of like this is an action thriller, but you really care about what happens to these characters. I mean, you grab the reader right from the beginning, and because they're so down to earth, you could almost say, well, in a way, it's a superhero comic, but it's really more of a family drama.
family drama with action, adventure, and a thriller, and they're all rolled up into one fat ball.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
and it's a fun ride for those of you who read Divinity. It is that. What about John? You've been quiet over there. I know you're working on stuff. What attracts you to the Silverline universe? Like if you were talking to somebody at a con and they were like, "What's Silverline all about? Why would we want to look into their stuff?" What's your take on why Silverline is so cool?
Well, I mean, I tell everybody I always bring up that it's kind of like Malibu Comics 2.0 because it's got a little bit of everything for everybody.
Yeah,
That was kind of
I would
the
agree.
idea at the beginning.
Yeah.
I can almost
know.
see John because I'm part of Silverline, you punk. Now read the comments. Do you need to know any other reason?
Aaron
Do you
thinks
need
so
another
little
reason?
of me, I swear.
Yeah,
He's a gentle giant, folks.
I
Don't be
am.
scared of John.
Yeah.
He's going to be at MCFC. Are you not? Memphis Comic and
I
Fantasy
am,
Con here?
and actually, I'm actually trying to finish up a commission right now.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
For
Are you going to have
Thank
some of your Silverline material there as well that people can look at?
Of course.
Well, good. 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 Some original art, I would
I
hope.
still have pages that need homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. It's going to be you and me. And rumor has it that our colleague Scott Wakefield, all the way up from upstate New York, is going to come down to the Mid-South and join us. So we'll
But
see.
you know he's going to bring his banjo too.
Well, you better. We're going to ask for a song. And we're
Yeah.
going to record it. We're going to put it on YouTube so that forever.
Well,
it
he
will
brought
be
his
there.
banjo down to Florida, so we know he's bringing it to Tennessee.
All right. Well, that's going to be worth the price of admission alone. There will be music posted. Maybe we'll all sing, and that'll really, really scare people. Remember, it's forever, just like Rolling Santa Claus. It's on there forever. It's going to be there.
Well, that's
Aaron,
Rolling Santa Claus has scarred some children already, hasn't it?
That's right. Who is that, Mommy? Really? Who is that? So, Aaron, tell me a little bit more about Obsoletes and the Christmas Story, and how you worked that in with a science fiction environment, because presumably far future science fiction, sometimes a Christmas
even have
situation
Christmas?
can be a little challenging in that
Well,
respect.
yeah, especially like they're on another planet. I know that.
Right.
Do they even have Christmas? That's
Right.
That's an interesting. Apparently they do. They go out, to do a job and get some money to give back to the poor people. There's a lot of poor and homeless people around the area they live, so they basically do some work to get some money to help out. And
Cool.
yeah. So like I said, I didn't write the story.
Right.
But
You've
but
read
I
the
know
script, though.
I've
right?
read the script. Yes.
So
and-
we're going
and
to
I
get to
agree.
know character dynamics, and I mean, after
Maybe
we
a
read
little.
this pages, are we going to know these, at least a couple of the main characters, and get to connect with them?
A little bit, I would think so. Yeah, I think you'd get it. I tried to draw a sense of who they were in there. The name Obsoletes actually means something, and that you'll find that out in the main comic. There is a reason for that name. It's not just, sounds cool, whatever. There's a reason behind it. So I think you will find that out more from the comic when you read it. But you will be introduced to the main characters. I think you'll get a sense of what they're about. I think so, at least.
I'm getting the impression, though, just from what you're telling me, that it's got an Expendables feel to it in terms of, am I on the right track there, or the wrong track?
Maybe, yeah, I could see that. Now, I only saw the first Expendables, but I remember the concept. Yeah, I can see that.
And even the team, the to reference genre that everybody knows better than that. The alien crew, felt like they were kind of expendable,
right.
On Nostromo on the first.
There's a lot of some of the characters on there are heavily inspired by aliens.
Okay.
I took some reference. I designed them straight from aliens. One of the characters is supposed to be like a 55-year-old version of like Vasquez.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I wasn't far off in my.
No, she was actually supposed to be a guy in the original script, but we why don't we make her like this veteran woman military who's like this older woman, but she's just like built like a brick. I won't finish that sentence. But
like Linda
know,
Hamilton in Terminator 2. That what you're thinking?
Kinda. She's just this huge, and I was like, yeah, but let's make her a girl. I always thought Vasquez was such a cool character.
She's a very, very cool character. Yes.
So yeah.
A lot. She reminded me of Ripley. In those days when Alien first came out, the Ripley character, it seemed like this unlikely and surprising ending to the movie. Spoilers, she survived.
Yeah.
But
with her cat.
I know, it's a cat.
Yay.
But the point the way they wrote her was so cool in that she was really just one of the smartest people on the ship, and
Yeah.
solved the mystery before people were just either naively following what the company told them to do, or they just didn't realize that they could indeed get stabbed in the back and betrayed as badly as they did. And she's one of the first ones to go, okay, guys, we're on our own. This is it. I think she convinces, the captain, of course, of that, but it's just too late. The thing is out and it's waylaying everybody.
Yeah.
In terms of sci-fi, would you say that Obsoletes is more on the adventure side, the survival thriller side, like Alien? I mean, where does
I
it
think it's
fall?
more adventure.
Okay.
I think so. That's usually thinking of the story. I've only read the second issue, but yeah, more adventure. I'm trying to think of a good reference. Not like Star Wars, but just going to planets, having adventures, that sort of thing. That seems to be the main sort of gist of it, or whatever.
And we learn through the characters grow through their experiences, and barely survive, and we go through it with them. I assume that's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a whole other team of people in the main comic that are not even seen in the Christmas. So, and they're really cool. So,
Is there an overreaching? Remember how in X-Files, you had the monster of the week, but then you had like an ongoing story arc in the background. Does Obsoletes have that as well?
No, this is a full story. There
Gotcha.
there is yeah.
Okay.
That's what Divinity has, is an overarching and the adventure of the week sort of thing.
The week sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Same here with Silverblade. There's a backdrop, ongoing conflict that's gone on really for centuries between these two secret societies, and each wants what it wants, and it started way back in the Middle Ages. So we enter the storyline in the Victorian era, but I think I mentioned this before as well, but the unique thread in Silverblade is the silver itself, and the weapons themselves survive beyond the characters' time. They're timeless. So I hope to do, if the first series does well, I want to jump through time, keeping the weapons the same, but bringing in different characters to use the weapons and bring in the conflict. So you could conceivably jump all the way back to the Middle Ages and tell a Silverblade story. You could also jump way into the far future and tell a Silverblade story, because it's really about the blades themselves.
They did a really good job at that with the Grendel series.
Yes.
I always really liked that.
Yes.
That concept, especially Grendel Prime. He's one of my favorites. I think he was a lot of people's favorites.
Yeah.
Whereas Divinity has a very much of the fugitive feel.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does have that. And there were a couple of movies that dealt with unique teenagers with special talents that are hunted before the X-Men and that sort of thing, because that's really more superhero. But I think there was a Firestarter, and there was also a movie called The Fury, which is earlier than that. But the idea was that these young people had skills they didn't understand. They were espers, or they were telekinetic, or they could cast fire or whatever. And government gets excited about that. Hey, we can harness this for whatever nefarious purpose. So you've got that going on too, which I love. But then that's kind of the background. But then it's also about them getting to know each other, the family unit.
Family drama. Lots of family drama.
Yeah. And then, you seem to be also the type of creator who's not afraid to put people in jeopardy, or maybe even, dare we say it, risk the lives of your main characters. Is that something that, in other words, you're not afraid to kill people off if you have to?
If I have to, yeah. I wouldn't want to do that right off the bat. I'd lose.
Obviously, no. But I like the courage and the level of a story where literally anything can happen, because people get comfortable with their ensemble cast. And one of the coolest things about getting involved in a storyline, whether it's television or streaming or a movie series or whatever, is when the creators aren't afraid to kill people off. It's like, yeah, sorry, they died, and it
Yes.
raises the stakes.
When they killed off Bobby in Supernatural, I was devastated.
Oh,
Yeah, but they brought him back. So
Damn.
yeah.
Not really. I mean,
Oh yeah, well, kind of, not really. Yeah. Yeah, but if you guys have read
not the
my
real
own
Bobby.
personal stories, I'm never afraid to slaughter my character.
Yeah, you're infamous for that, Aaron. You're
Yeah.
not scared.
This is why I'm not allowed to actually write for Silverline. I can just draw for
You
them.
can just draw for them because you'd be too brutal.
Yeah,
If you're, okay, everybody dies. That's it.
that's right.
So, but yeah, that's one thing that I'm going to explore with my series as well. Is let's jump way ahead and keep the swords. I also would love to, this is just dreaming in the future, but I'd love to have these blades produced as props. There is a prop for one of the silver daggers that has been developed that will be at one of the cons when the series comes out. I'm saving that for the launch of the series. But I would really love to have the sword made and the two daggers actually made. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. What about you guys?
I had an instance of that way, way back when. Primal Force was a new series for DC way back in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
And I was fortunate enough to be involved from the very beginning, story, plotting, everything like that. We flew out to New York and everything. And I was on all of the issues for the entire run. Wow. And I had a cosplayer down in Chicago who I'm still friendly with to this day because of this. But he made all of the creative team, the pendants, the Primal Force pendants that they all wore. He made copies of those in pewter, and
very cool.
Gave each of us a copy. But I still have it. It's hanging right here in my studio. It was just awesome. The most amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about? Do you see anything in Divinity that might work as a prop that's mass produced?
Yeah, her necklace. She's got a V on her necklace.
I thought so. Yeah. I like that. I like that idea. What about you, Aaron? Anything that you created that would easily be produced as maybe a souvenir?
There's a necklace in my story. If you've read my story, there is a necklace that is important to the story that would be made. But I just want to get my book made to look like the book from Never Ending Story with my own logo, like actual metal stylings on top of the book and stuff. That would just be for me. I don't know if I could ever sell that.
Now, we did have, for one of our Kickstarters for Cat and Mouse, if you notice, Mouse always wears the little mouse earrings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For one of our Kickstarters, we had a guy who had a 3D plastic printer, and we made little mouse earrings and sold them on the Kickstarter.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Her T-shirt would be kind of cool to make too, with the mouse face on it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Very, very cool characters. So as far as Silverline, let's talk a little bit more about the world we're creating. Through this anthology, we're going to introduce people to the Silverline publishing world. And I want people to know that it not only do we have variety, not only do we have all these different characters and all these different genres, but we've got really skilled creators. And tell us a little bit about where some of the people have come from. Now, Barbara, we know your background, Malibu, and, you're one of the veterans like I am, been around since the 90s and done work for DC and Dark Horse, and obviously Malibu and probably Marvel as well.
Marvel,
Image. What about your creative team, and what are their backgrounds? So people might have seen their work before Divinity.
Alex Sarabia is from Mexico, and he's an absolutely amazing talent. He does a little bit of horror work down in Mexico. I would really, really love to see him spread his wings here in America more. He really deserves it. In fact, he's just recently been laid off of his job, so he's really wanting to spread his artistic wings. But I've lost all of my old contacts at Marvel and DC. So there's been such a huge turnover in the last few years. I have nobody to show his work to, but he deserves to be working in the bigs, as far as I'm concerned. Which means, I might lose him as a penciler, but he's such a great guy. It's a risk I'm willing to take.
I hear that.
RA's been around probably longer than I have. With Malibu. I think he's been with DC and Marvel as well, I believe, as a writer.
Do you remember any of the things he's written for Marvel or DC? I was trying to remember.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. Just I don't remember.
Well, he's been around. And
Scimitar. Yeah.
Scimitar. That's it. Yeah,
that was it. That's his big claim to fame.
And we have someone with a claim.
He writes novels too.
Yes, he does. We have someone with a claim to fame that's just joined us tonight, the illustrious Brent Larson of Kalis fame. Welcome, Brent. How are you?
I'm great. I didn't know that my fame for having eaten 20 Del Tacos all at once had preceded me. That's what you're referring to, right?
Indeed. We have a lot of Del Taco people on the stream from time to time, namely Tommy Formonte, who I think owns stock in the company. He talks about it so much, but I'm going to have to try it. I've actually never had Del Tacos.
It's a better Taco Bell.
That's not really giving it high praises there.
Well,
I'm like, better than it's like, well, I can't remember if I've had it or not. I was, but it's kind of like it's better than McDonald's. It's like, yeah, it's not really selling it.
Del Taco has a magic, and if you don't acknowledge it, you may come to appreciate, but it's possible that it will never truly find the magic that is in you.
I can't wait to try some. When I come down to Orlando next year for the con, we're going to all have a Del Taco meal. I'll just have to do that. Brent, tell us a little bit about your involvement with the Christmas special. We've been talking tonight mainly about the Christmas special.
Great.
And the 6-page stories that we all have, and how, in essence, they are a trailer, so to speak, an introduction to some people. You already have printed material out there. So when you were presented with this opportunity to do a Christmas story, what were your thoughts on what part of your existing storyline did you want to draw from, and what was your intention and purpose with your 6-page Christmas story?
Okay. Well, I actually have 2 of them.
Okay.
And I'll start with Kalis first, because for all of the dozens of you who actually got Kalis's 1 through 4, issues 1 through 4, you would know that by the end of issue 4, a new status quo has been reached. And without giving too many spoilers away, basically the CIA now, Scott Anders, the astronaut who fell to Earth, now works for the CIA, and he is basically like an agent that can't be killed, can't be stopped, and now for reasons that I've explained in the book, he has to work for them. So I kind of thought it would be fun to tell a story about a mission that he goes on that kind of has a Christmas theme, but also kind of showcases who he is without necessarily having to go with the backstory that I've kind of built up in the 4 issues that are out there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, did you find that it was a challenge for you to bring sort of a dark thriller, espionage thriller, action adventure into the sort of Christmas era, the Christmas spirit, the Christmas tone?
Not really. It actually was kind of fun. And the reason is, the fact is, Christmas is a thing. So you got to know how your character is going to react to Christmas. Like when they tell writers to really build their characters, you got to do the basics like what's your character's job? How would your character vote in the next election? How does your character feel about puppies? Okay, all of that's good. And then you have to get deeper into the characters, such as if your character saw a bus on fire, would he or she get out and investigate, or would they keep driving hoping somebody else would take care of it? That kind of question.
Yeah.
But another question that kind of faces everybody is, how does your character feel about Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think it's just a kind of a dumb question, but it's really weird how people really can talk for 10 minutes about how they feel about Christmas. And so I just kind of ran with it. It was like, well, how does my character feel about Christmas? And what's fun is Scott, the character in the story, actually gets to talk a little bit about where he's been, this other world that he's been, and how they don't have Christmas, but they have something else. And so he gets to share a little bit about that. While he's also taking out all of these kidnappers. So definitely,
that's cool.
Up and down.
That's cool though. That like the character is a gritty character, so you can have a lot of fun with sort of a nostalgic memory of Christmas. You could even, I don't know whether you're going to go flashback or not, but you could do that, or you could just have him remembering Christmases past. It's a time of
flashbacks, but I didn't do that in this one. So
okay,
yeah,
very cool. And what's your other Christmas story besides?
Well, I have created another series that Justin Franklin is working on right now called Cape Town.
Okay,
and it has not actually the first issue's not been published yet, but it is a superhero book. And kind of the premise of the book is that it takes place in a town called New Capernaum, which is basically kind of like Vegas, only it's more like cosplay. The entire city is about cosplay. So, people like to dress up as superheroes, and then surprise, some of them actually have powers.
Oh,
but then something happened, and they all disappeared. And a little bit of time has passed, and they're starting to reemerge, and that's kind of where our story picks up. It's with a character called Recon. That's his superhero name, and he's going to meet up with another guy called Seismic. But the story here is how Recon basically, as a kid, decided that he was going to be a superhero when he grew up. It's funny, it occurred to me as I was thinking through the whole idea, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I remember saying I wanted to be an astronaut way back when I was a little kid. But the more I grew up, the answer was Batman. And we knew that really wasn't going to happen, but it didn't matter because Batman was awesome. And who would want to be an accountant? You could be Batman.
Yeah.
This world of Cape Town is a place where people can actually do that if they want. And so I just kind of wanted to tell the story of him as a kid, and something in his life happens that puts him on this course. And I think it's kind of a fun story, and it is not terribly gritty, which I'm kind of glad for. Gritty Christmas, it has its place, but I hate it when everybody goes gritty Christmas.
Right. Right. What do you mean by gritty Christmas? Talk to us a little bit.
Christmas, they say Christmas is a time of giving, but I've seen the blood in the snow.
Oh, got it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Deconstruction. Okay. Yeah.
Bad Santa.
Yeah.
Bad Santa. Deconstruction. So the tone of Cape Town is much more. It's lighter. Is it? You're not deconstructing superheroes. Are you humanizing them in terms of de-emphasizing the fantasy and bringing them down to earth and sort of their day-to-day life, or
I've got all of that in there, but I'll probably talk more about this in a future one. But
yeah,
part of the inspiration came from watching The Boys.
yeah, I got
And The
that
Boys
feel.
is a really fun. It is a deep show. It's interesting, but it's also so dark. And
Yeah.
frankly, it takes the worst of humanity and flashes it up there. And the idea being, if you get power, you are going to abuse it and ruin the lives of everyone around you. The problem is, I don't buy it. I've read comics for too long. Plus, I also know cops and firefighters. They don't seem to let that happen. So, what's the difference? And it occurred to me it would be fun to actually tell a story about a superhero who has a day job, who has a wife, and they actually kind of share this superhero experience together. And he has to make sure he doesn't go out on weekends because weekends are for together time. And they can't go, he doesn't have a lair. I mean, he has a day job. Who can afford a lair? So all of these things, so it's kind of a deconstruction, but at the same time, I genuinely feel like there are people out there who, if they had great power, they actually would be responsible. I don't think it's crazy to think that that could ever happen. So I kind of just ran with that idea.
I like that idea because we talked before about the challenge of writing Boy Scout characters, because people just either dismiss it out of hand, but then we look back and we say, well, some of the most enduring characters are the Boy Scout characters, Superman being the one that comes to mind the most. Captain America and Spider-Man are Boy Scouts. And in terms of, they are, aligned with, if you want to use, heaven forbid we use these alignment terms from D&D, but I'm going to throw it out there. They're lawful good, right? So I've always argued with people that the challenge is to not dismiss them out of hand as that's corny, nobody's going to buy it, and say, take up the challenge and see if you can make Superman interesting. David Goyer took up that challenge a little bit to mixed reviews in A Man of Steel, but I think that a writer that is really gifted, talented, and works hard can bring something compelling to a Boy Scout character. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
totally
you sound like you don't find it particularly difficult, that it does come naturally? It's, okay, I'll write this character as lawful good, and it's not going to be hard. It's not going to be impossible to do.
I mean, and I'll get all kinds of flack for this, but the Superman-Batman dichotomy, I always thought Batman, I mean, his main motivation is rage and hatred at criminals, and his desire to not necessarily just bring justice, but also just to see, his vengeance against what happened to his parents visited on the city's criminals. And after a while, man, does that get exhausting. So then I look at Superman and the fact that he's just a guy who's trying to do the right thing and just happens to have the power to make a difference. But that doesn't make his problems go away. They make his problems bigger. So in a weird way, Superman actually feels like somebody that I know. Like Batman sounds like somebody I don't want to know. But Superman sounds like somebody that I could be like, hey man, what a drag that you saved that guy from Lex Luthor, and then the guy complains that you dented his boat. I mean, how does that make you feel? And Superman would be like, it kind of sucks, to be honest with you. And then we'd have a nice conversation. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the restraint that Superman has to engage in all the time, because he could literally just rule the earth and make everyone bow to his will. And he chooses not to, because, again, he's lawful good. So, again, the challenge here is to go deeper with superheroes, and that doesn't always mean going darker. I think people have a misconception that going deeper means deconstructing, going darker. It actually means literally going deeper. What is the nature of this struggle of light and dark and good versus evil? Even if you're in the gray area, we talked before about Wolverine and a wildly popular character, and yet, anti-hero, but he's almost a cursed hero that is trying to make up for maybe some of the not so nice things that he's done. So there's a struggle there. People like to focus on the berserker nature and the rage. Oh man, it's cool, but at the same time, he's trying to figure out what it means to be human, even though you can do what he does. And I think a good writer explores that. I think Peter David did a great job with the Hulk. The Hulk being sort of the ultimate Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde template. And how do you deal with what you do when you're in that Hulk form? And how do you use that awesome power? So going deeper with it makes it a more compelling story. Now, the thing about this Christmas special that I love is people are going to get a sampling of all of these creators' different skills and their characters and their worlds. And to my knowledge, this is the first publication of Silverline of this kind to give this many creators a chance to show their stuff between two covers and just say, hey, here it is. Do you like it? Do you not like it? If you don't like this, there's another story right behind it.
It's a smorgasbord of goodness.
A smorgasbord of goodness. Right. We're watching the great Aaron Humphreys here color one of my pages. You see what you're looking at, for those wondering, like, what in the world is he coloring? He's coloring in my storyline. We have silver weapons that wield divine energy against infernal energy. The cultists that the Order of Sacred Knights are fighting disintegrate when they encounter or are stabbed with these silver weapons. So we've got a disintegration scene that you're coloring, which is going to be really cool to see how you handle that. The idea was sort of inspired by the Raiders of the Lost Ark meltdown at the end, where the Nazis get melted down by the beautiful. Yeah. So it's going to be kind of fun to see how you handle that. But the fantasy that Silverblade takes place in really does address good and evil in their broad strokes, because I wanted to go very mythical with it. But I also wanted to address, like you said, with Brent, with the characters, what does that mean to these characters? Like, what does Christmas mean to them? So we get to see that in this brief 6-page story. We also get a couple of pages of action when we get a couple of bad guys attacking the good guys in the story, and we see how Silver affects them. I'm still not going to give away the why Silver destroys evil answer yet. That will come in the miniseries next year. But Brent, talk a little bit about when you're dealing with the more epic and mythical struggle of good and evil rather than the more gray area struggle. When you approach your characters, what do you do to bring them down to earth? Even though we have, great evil and great good clashing, how do you make the characters accessible to the reader? What do you do to help that happen?
I think that's a great question.
Thank you.
It's funny. I think it always is going to come down to choices.
Okay.
And Kalis, in each episode, in each issue, Scott Anders, as I try to reveal the story, hopefully it's working and people have an inkling of what I'm talking about. But he keeps being presented with these scenarios where he either does nothing or he acts. And when he acts, sometimes things don't go better. Sometimes they don't turn out well. And I think that is totally accessible because I think, frankly, good and evil in our own lives comes down to the choices that we make. And right and wrong aren't necessarily clear. And you have to look at why you want to do good and why you're willing to do bad. And when you're willing to do bad, are you thinking that it's still a good decision? You know, these kind of things I feel like everyone has to make. In Cape Town, it's the story of these two guys who decide to take what they've been given and try to help people. But what's weird is that choice in and of itself causes havoc to their lives. It causes them some ridicule. And again, I think just what I'm trying to present is this idea of, you know, every day we face these decisions, and people who say I don't have a choice are not. I don't believe they're being terribly truthful with themselves. I think everyone has a decision and has a choice of whether to act in defense of good or in pursuit of evil, and it's often a hard choice, and sometimes not, but often it isn't. And I think that struggle is something I hope is coming out in the stories that I'm writing.
That's good. That's good because, again, individual choices that we make every single day, that is something that people can relate to, even in the most fantastic environments, whether it's otherworldly, like science fiction story that Aaron is drawing, or an everyday contemporary story like Barb's Divinity, even though there are superpowers there. Barbara, tell us a little bit about, are you going to reveal where Divinity's powers come from ever? Are you going to hint at it, or what are you going to do with that? I'm just curious.
If that happens, it won't be for many, many issues.
Okay.
So I'm keeping it under wraps.
Okay. Is there, then you don't have to give anything away, but you know, you're a fan of Supernatural, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that as the characters grew from first season and on to umpteenth season, we realized that the backdrop struggle, the overarching background, was the divine versus the infernal, right? And they were being employed, almost, the Winchester boys, for the side of good. And we met some angels along the way, and
sometimes they had to do bad in order to do good. They had to break a few eggs to make the omelet.
So would you say that you're going to present again a struggle like that, a binary struggle? Okay.
Oh yes, okay. Yes. Divinity is going to be put in a position where she questions whether or not her powers are a gift or a curse, and whether or not she deserves them, and if she's good or bad. So
now, are you going to address this? Because I'm facing this with my characters who are also going to potentially wield either divine or infernal power based on their choices. Do you have a behavior clause attached to this power? And you don't have to give anything away, but in other words,
you mean like fear?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like, if she uses her powers for selfish reasons, do they diminish if it's done for more beneficial for others reasons? In other words, ideologically good reasons, does the power increase?
No, because I don't like the the reward and punishment idea of that.
Aspect to that. Okay.
She
Interesting.
needs to figure this out on her own and without the impetus of getting rewarded or punished.
Okay. Okay.
It's a question of right and wrong, power, and morality. You know,
Right.
and then the people around her are going to have to be in charge of guiding her in the right direction, or not guiding her, or being bad examples. You know,
She's almost like the ring bearer in Lord of the Rings in a way.
mm-hmm.
Very sought after character, very powerful, and yet very innocent and a target. Like
Right.
Frodo.
And we already see in the second issue that just came out that she can use her ability to heal to harm, because she gave the bad guy boils on his hand.
Oh yeah.
So
That was
how
cool.
far is she willing to take that?
Yeah. And what
And
does
then-
that do to her? In other words, emotionally. I'm not talking
Right.
any physical, but
Right, especially since she's only 11 at the time right
Right.
now. You know, that's a pretty
Yeah.
big burden for an 11-year-old to carry.
yeah. No kidding. Speaking of burdens for 11-year-olds, so Aaron.
Yeah, lost it.
Throwing you under the bus, man. I had to do a segue somehow. What's the big conflict in obsolete? Is it an individual conflict, or is it more, survival? Because you got the three, man against man, man against nature, man against himself. Do you have all three, or is there focus?
There's an element that is not introduced in the Christmas special. There's another team, so they become obsolete due to the progress of time.
Okay.
Maybe the best way to say it. I don't want to give anything away because that's kind of part of the story, but there is a reason why they are called what they're called.
Excellent. Well, I think traditionally this is the time we start talking about pop culture and some of the other creations that are out in the genre world that are making a splash and making an impression. And I want to bring up one that I recently saw. I watched Dune Part 1. I thought it was a very well done interpretation of the book, and I wanted to get you guys' input on Dune. So let me just start with Barb, because she's waving a lot. Barb, talk to me about Dune Part 1. First question I always ask is, are you familiar with the books, or did you go in just...
Nope. I already know the books.
Okay.
Saw the first movies that they made out of it. And while this movie was visually appealing and very much blockbusterish, I was a little bit disappointed that it kind of followed right exactly in the same footsteps as the original movie, although in a much better way. And perhaps that's because that's the way the book did, but I loved it. I mean, make no mistake, it was grand, and the music was swelling and dramatic and everything. The cinematography was awesome, except for it was so freaking dark. Everything was dark. I don't know. Somebody threw out a theory here at me the other day when I complained about this on Facebook. But especially this particular studio, Legendary, likes to do their films very, very dark. And maybe it's just because I'm over 60. I can't see worth shit, And so, and it was like, what's going on? Can you tell what's going on? And one of the theories somebody put out, because it's very annoying for me, and I had a lot of people comment that, it was annoying for them too, was that it's cheaper to do CGI when it's darker lighting, because you don't have to throw in as many details. And I'm like, well, that's just a really poor excuse, because I want to be able to see. I paid X amount of dollars to get into this movie. I want to see it. So that was my only complaint. I did love the music, the movie, and I'm so glad that they didn't try to squish it all into one film like they did with the original. Um, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the sequels.
I agree, and I do recognize the criticism there of Dark. I think if you're doing a movie that takes place on a desert planet where there's a lot of sun, there should be some brighter sequences, and there were some. I mean, there were some, and maybe he's saving more of that for later when Paul inherits his destiny, as leader of the Fremen and so on, and the Messiah eventually.
Mm-hmm.
What did you? Has anyone else seen it that's in the stream tonight? Brent, go for it, my friend. What's your take? Dune Part 1.
Well, I wanted to say I saw it on IMAX, and
Ooh,
it was
so jealous.
Fantastic. Yeah, I saw it on Orlando's best IMAX screen.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I do that maybe once every couple of years. So yeah, it was worth it. Sound was fantastic. It didn't seem as dark to me. I wonder if that was because I saw it in IMAX. I'm not certain. But yeah, I loved it. There were a couple times I wished it was a little bit more emotionally vivid, especially like, Duke Leto and Jessica. That almost, their relationship, I felt seemed a little short shrifted, but other than that, they did some things really well, like Leto's relationship with Paul actually had a couple really nice moments that weren't in the Kyle MacLachlan version, not that I remember. So yeah, I really didn't have any complaints, to tell you the truth. We went early, and all of the Nuvi stuff with Maria Menounos was like on 11 in terms of the volume, and we're like, turn it off. So that put us in a bad mood a little bit. So that could have been better, but then the movie started and everything was fine.
And everything was fine. The director is known for visual styling, definitely along the lines of Ridley Scott's approach, where it really is a visual painting. If you've seen his other films, Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, you really get a sense this guy knows how to put epic on the screen. So I was very pleased to see he was going to do it. He's also a longtime fan of the books, so he wanted to be as true to the books as possible. What I found really satisfying about it was he chose to focus on really the compelling calling of Paul Atreides' destiny, even from the very beginning, rather than give us the Princess Irulan diary telling us the setting and lecturing us about an encyclopedia version of the Dune world. And okay, here's spice. This is why it's important. Okay, here's all the different houses they're fighting. Here's the Emperor. He's manipulating the houses against each other. Okay, here's the Guild Navigators. They're all weird because they use a spice to fold space so people can travel. They didn't do all that. They just basically said, okay, here's this girl. She's living a nomadic life on this planet with a valuable commodity on it, and it's being really just ravaged by this royal house, and they have just sent the people out to live in the desert, and they just rape the landscape and take what they can, and they're these big sandworms that tear it apart, and they take the spice, and the spice is the most valuable item in the universe and all that. And I love the way he opens it with really Chani, the Fremen girl, telling us about the conflict on the planet Arrakis, which is commonly called Dune. And then we go right to Paul's dreams about her. So initially we see, okay, there's a supernatural connection between them, or some sort of mystical connection, I should say. And then we finally join in with the politics of, okay, their royal family just got told they get to go to Arrakis and manage, this planet with the most valuable item on it. And it may not be a good thing. At first, maybe this is really cool. Then they figure out maybe this isn't so cool. So I like the fact that we enter it through Paul and Chani rather than the politics.
Now,
Um,
my
did-
husband had never read the books or anything, and he did get lost a little. So
okay.
My wife is
Okay.
the same.
Yeah. John, talk to us, my friend.
I do have a question about something to kind of move past Dune. That's
Yeah.
happened this week.
Yeah.
What do y'all think about the Image Comic Staffer Union that has formed?
That's interesting. Tell us about, sort of set the stage and inform everybody, and then we'll comment.
Well, I'm trying to gather more. I've been trying to gather more information on it, but
Okay.
basically, a bunch of staffers over at Image Comics have formed a union.
Okay.
Um,
do you think this is going to become a model for other companies?
Countries.
Yeah, country. Yeah.
Well, other countries tend to have more unions than we do have here in the States.
Comic
So
book
actually, it would
companies.
be the United States following suit of everybody else.
Yes. Do you see this happening at Dark Horse or Marvel or DC?
I don't know. It depends on how well it works out here.
For every person that's working in comics, there's 10 people waiting behind them to take a job. And I can just see this being a scab labor situation where there's so many people willing to jump the labor lines in order to work for DC and Marvel.
And what do we mean by staffers? Do we mean
the name of the union is called Comic Book Workers United.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, presumably, when unions are formed, historically, it's because the workers have been mistreated or exploited or abused in some way. Their constitutional rights and so on have been abused, and so in order to represent themselves, they group together in order to remedy that through legal negotiations. And it's presumed that the union and its organization and its legal representation are much more robust than a single person going up against a behemoth like Warner Brothers, which owns DC, or Disney, who owns Marvel.
We know for years they have taken advantage of people working in comics anyway, especially the big two.
In terms of
how they've paid.
You're talking about
pay and
royalty
composition,
issues, right?
Well, I'm talking
royalty.
about pay per pages.
It's just come down quite a bit, by the way.
It is. It has come. Yeah.
Well, that's market forces. When, and again, I'm not arguing pro or con here. I'm just recognizing that we're in this field where the market is wide open, and if somebody can draw faster, and I know this very well because I'm very slow. If somebody can draw faster than I can for less money, they're going to say bye, Dean, and go with that person. And it's a harsh reality. I don't know if we're borrowing more trouble by, a conflict against that with a group, because then the group is going to require things of you also, like dues and all this sort of stuff. Has anybody run into anything working for any of the big publishers where you felt like if you had a group representation, you could have made a difference? John, have you felt that, or has Brent, any of you guys felt that?
Well, I haven't. This is my first go at the whole thing, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
coming from the staff side of it, I mean, I think Curtis would have a better insight on, kind of what the staff gets put through. Maybe even Roland would too.
Yeah.
I've heard stories where they're.
Yeah, he says it's difficult to see someone taken advantage of when the product can't even pay for itself. Yeah, we're dealing in art, and the art world is such a unique place, especially the comic book publishing world, where it's almost labor of love from the get-go, unless you're working for the big two and their publications are making millions of dollars, which I don't even know nowadays whether that's super relevant. Now, I know with Image, a lot of those guys end up selling their licenses to Hollywood, and they get these big options and so on and so forth. So, legal representation is always smart. I'm not necessarily aware of the need for group representation unless these creators are being taken advantage of by Image. And I don't know how that would happen because they own their own stuff.
Yeah.
Where, like in the past, for example, the creators of Superman or the creators of Batman, 70, 80 years ago, their families may have a legal claim to some royalties or something that the big publishers and the companies like Warner or Disney may not have sufficiently paid them their royalties. And I can see that, but I can also see that as sort of an individual legal representation issue rather than a group issue. What is Roland saying now? He says, I mean, everyone wants to make more money, but how can you really justify paying someone more money for a product that doesn't sell? That's a good point too. Brent, I know you've worked in an industry that's union involved, being the entertainment industry over in Hollywood. Were you required to be a SAG member, and what did that entail?
I actually didn't work in the film industry per se. I work in the nonprofit sector, which is not unionized at all.
Okay.
But I will say I've worked with SAG actors.
Okay.
And it is kind of a tough road for them. Everyone wants to get into SAG, but once you get into SAG, your ability to do what you want suddenly gets limited because the union forces you to take SAG jobs. And if you want to work on a smaller scale film, you're not allowed to unless they pay you SAG rates. And so it's kind of a weird world. I mean, everyone wants to be in SAG who's an actor because the potential to go big is there, but it's hardly a guarantee. It's still pretty much a long shot. So I don't know if that helps at all. Actually.
It does. It does. What about you, Barbara? Have you encountered, in unrelated fields, people who union or not union and the pros and cons of both sides of that world?
I have never been in a union in my life or even come up against, an issue with a union. I've spent 20 years, the last 20 years doing, all right, let's back up a bit. I worked for about 12 years doing full-time comics and then working 20 years in the print industry while still doing comics part-time. And neither one of them had unions. The printing company I worked for was a small family-run place, but we did a lot of stuff. But nobody ever even brought the U word up. And way back when I was doing comics full-time in the 90s, now I hate to say this because it sounds not only bitter, but like I'm complaining, but I was a woman working in a 90% male-dominated industry, and I was swimming in the mainstream. I didn't want to make any waves. I mean, I already had a hard enough time. I had to swim twice as fast to get half as far as my male counterparts. So making waves about and complaining about anything was not something that I even entertained, even briefly. So unfortunately, it's sad but true.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the common threads I'm seeing, and Roland brings this up in a peripheral way. He says, I was in a union briefly when I was in college when I worked at Kroger. The big benefit I remember was all my prescriptions were $1. I was 19, so don't really care about that. That's a good point. It seems to me that, again, if there's a lot of money involved, our industry, with few exceptions, 1%, there's just not huge amounts of money involved. And if you you know, if you have legal representation, let's say you invent a character, you create a character, and it's going to be optioned by some production company to make it into a movie or television series, which is the equivalent of winning the lottery in our business, I would imagine, to most folks. I would just say, you know, get a good lawyer, get a good entertainment lawyer, a good IP lawyer, and you're going to be fine. I don't see the need to group with a union, because the union is just another middleman group that's going to be somebody that tells you what to do to get what you want. You can fight really as an individual for your own, I guess the word is, if you're being mistreated in some way, if you say, hey, I'm being underpaid, just ask for more money or go get a job with another publisher. So I'd like to know, really, I'll do some investigating, John. I'm glad you brought it up, because I want to see what they hope to gain, what the Image folks hope to gain by forming a union.
Well, they have a list on there. They made a list. It was a Twitter feed.
Okay.
It's personal. The whole union thing is just, it's a list of complaints against Image itself. So the problem is with Image itself, not with the industry as a whole. This is why the idea of forming the union is almost kind of pointless, because when you form unions like in the steel industry, other industries, you are talking about standards and practices that affect the industry whole.
So these are certain company.
Right. These are standard practices that should be affected by all companies in this industry. Should have these basic standard practices. We're going to fight for them. This is a list of complaints against Image itself. They're not listing these complaints against Image or DC or Marvel, anything. So it's technically not a union. It's a bunch of people complaining about how they're treated by Image, and they posted it on Twitter. And they called it a union because you can call it anything you want, I guess.
Okay.
But that's it. I mean, everything about it is like, well, this is all about management can't do this, the management can't do that. We should have, certain rates, and we should have like meetings or whatever. I'm like, yes, that's all directly related to Image, not the industry. This is technically not a union.
Okay.
So it's the whole union thing is just, and it's also
a word they're using.
There was actually, from what I understand, from what I read, there was actually a vote to form a union.
Right, but these are employees. Like, in other words, this union has nothing to do with creators in the industry.
To answer the question, it was Bleeding Cool came out with it, and a couple other people also did stories on it.
Right, and so it technically doesn't have any creatives. It's not like they're talking. I mean, they're not union going like, we should have a standard page rate for artists. That's not in there. You would think if this is a union for the comic industry,
well, it said the staffers. Like I said,
exactly, the staffers.
Okay.
And so if it's the staffers, then it's kind of I mean, it's like, do I really care about it? Well, no, I'm an artist. It doesn't affect me, and they're not writing anything in it that would affect me. The only thing that would possibly affect me is the fact that they have collective voting rights to vote people off or cancel titles in the comic and Image company that they find offensive, or somebody on the comic did something wrong, said something wrong, racist, homophobic, transphobic, all of that. They listed that they can have a collective vote to cancel the title, and basically cancel these people, basically vote them out of the company. That's to me precursor to a witch hunt. And this is Portland, Oregon in a nutshell. This is where all this comes from, because Image is in Portland.
Oh, is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like,
it makes a lot more sense now.
Yes.
Okay.
So
it's basically, it's
when I read this,
collective empowerment is what it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you understand that it comes from people working in Portland, Oregon, when I read this, I'm like, yeah, this is that city across the river. It's across the Columbia River for me, because I live in Vancouver. So once I read that, and I knew it was from Portland, Oregon, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, all right, yeah, I get it. They do this stuff all the time, and they're posting it online to get moral support and stuff. So people will and of course they put Image in a very precarious, because they go against any of this, and Image is like this. Then we need to cancel Image, right?
Right. It's almost like they're baiting an argument.
Yeah, that probably won't happen, because Time's not easy.
Well, Image is not a controlled company. Image is many separate studios all collected under one collective heading. So you technically can't really cancel the company per se, but the last clause will get everybody up in arms. You read the first few clauses, like, yeah, this is general complaints about the staff, and they're giving a lot of people more work than there is in their contract. What they say, no, this is your job, okay, but I'm doing a lot of other work that's not in my job description, blah blah blah. It's the last clause, the one I told you about, has got everyone riled up because they're basically saying we want basically veto rights on the product that Image is making. Well, what company in their right mind is going to give veto rights to their employees?
No.
That's just not even. I mean, if like imagine forming a company and then your employees like, well, we want to be able to vote out any product you make, and we want to be able to take a collective vote and vote to cancel it. Well, then why would I have my company? What would be the point?
Right.
I mean, it would just be like
company.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm just
running
paying
it
them
here. Right,
exactly.
Right.
And so they want that because they want to be able to have the power to enforce their viewpoints, whether political, whatever, on the company.
Yes.
Which I understand, but so like Image is like, if they go against this, well, how dare they? And then the people like, well, if they go against us, the people, then this company is, this oppressive company and blah blah blah. So they put Image. This is reason they actually posted these lists on Twitter before they even told the management at Image.
Oh,
we knew about this first before the management at Image even knew about it.
ouch.
So this is a strong arm movement if I've ever seen one. They're strong arming them into a response because it's like, if you don't do what we say, this is public judgment.
Private company can do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
If you have grievances, you address them. That's what. I mean, turning into a mob is never a good thing.
No. Well, the thing is like if their complaints are legitimate, that's fine, but it really should just be between them and the company.
Yeah,
and this is why the whole
company.
Right.
What they're trying to do is stir up the mob mentality across the board. It sounds like in the industry where it's like, hey, we need to form a group so that if this group doesn't like something that Marvel or DC are doing, then we can shut them down because we'll accuse them of, thought crimes or intentional
whatever.
crimes.
And it's the idea that, instead of trying to cancel by the internet alone, we actually have people working in the industry that could take collective votes to cancel us out as they see fit.
I hope that doesn't.
So it's like it's. I mean, I go and I saw that. I'm like, okay, I get it. And it was very sneaky. It's like the first four clauses, like, oh yeah, it's just based on that little final clause. Like, oh, but by the way, people are like, wait, what's that final one?
Wait a
like,
minute.
We want power of authority over every product you publish. Wait, what? So is this a coup? Because it sounds like it's a weird form of a coup. And it's like
there's this whole thing called freedom of speech,
Yeah.
And if they don't like something that Image is doing, they don't have to work for Image. They can go work for somebody else.
Yeah.
They can make their own company.
Exactly.
It's not about shutting others down. It's about saying what you want, and it's okay, free.
Well, yeah, because in the thing, if it was really a proposal for an actual union of these workers, they would be saying these practices go across all companies. DC is doing them. Marvel's doing them. Boom is doing them. All of that. But they're not saying that. This is all directed at Image. So then it's not a union.
Yeah.
It's you against the company. And it's like, okay, well then, but you can slap a union on anything and be like, well, it's a union. Because unless you work for Image, you really can't join. I mean, I can't go join the union and start fighting against Image because Image doesn't pay me. So what is my bargaining chip?
You can't join the union at the post office unless you join the post office.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And that's still delivering mail and packages, but there's no union at FedEx or at UPS or at
exactly. But what I'm saying is, if you work for Marvel and DC, you can't join this union because your complaints are not against Marvel, DC, against Image. So somebody working at DC as a staffer could join this union, but what's the point?
But we have heard from staffers about complaints about Marvel and DC.
And they should form their own complaint. And this should be a universal union. And maybe this is a stepping stone, but I don't think they kind of understand what a union is, or it's very confusing.
You know what it may be? What it may be, Aaron, is they're weather balloon. They're testing the waters to see if this catches on.
They want it to catch on, I think.
They want it to catch on because, again, collective empowerment against a perceived enemy, a perceived opposition by the ownership. Where, I mean, most of these issues can be resolved. We're not talking about, I mean, they can be resolved. If you have a problem with your employer, get a lawyer, talk to them. Go talk to the employer. If they push back, you get a lawyer, you talk to them. I mean, if you try to do this whole union thing, you're going to overcomplicate the relationships and really
right.
And complexity.
And the reason there is not a union of artists or whatever is so much artwork is actually taken from overseas. Most artists now, because they can pay their artists overseas less.
Yeah, it's universal.
Art collecting. Like as artists in the industry, like what are our collecting bargaining chips? We want more money. We'll just get the guy in the other country.
Let's get the other guy, right?
Yeah, so it's like they're already doing that. So I mean, what? Pay us more money to live American lifestyle? It's like I would have to move to another country than Karl Marvel.
Yeah.
I live in India or something. Now you can pay me less and I can live. Artists just kind of have to almost grin and take it sometimes, unless we all collectively quit at once. But I don't really see that happening.
No, it's always been a problem in the art field that somebody can do something better than you, and the market likes them better. There's really no grievance you can bring.
Well, like I
that.
said, there's 10 or 100 guys waiting right behind you to take your place if you step out of line.
Right.
And they're hungry and they're willing to work for peanuts.
Right.
I have got to go, you guys.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say it's getting to be that time, and we want to say thank you for everyone who joined us tonight. We want to again thank our sponsor, Daytona Beach Comic Convention. We also want to push our Indiegogo, the Silverline Christmas Special, that has more than 15 creators, which will soon be added to the list for the backers. And did anyone have any last minute announcements before we say our collective good night this evening? Anyone? I guess not. So we're going to say our little phrase that we love to say, which is make mine
Silverline.
Good night, everybody.